Hi, this is Rachel. I am going to go ahead and give you a recorded lecture about the first grade content based on the Georgia Standards of Excellence. So from the Georgia Standards document, this is a summary of what first graders are going to be doing. They're going to be looking at magnets, shadows, sound, doesn't say light, but also light, weather, and the needs of plants and animals. Some things that you might expect your kindergartners to do are to use whole numbers and also create drawings that represent ideas. So we're going to go right into S1E1, which is weather data and weather patterns, and that's really it. Weather data is what kind of information do we collect about the sky, and weather patterns are what are these regular repeating types of weathers that we see. So these are the standards. There are four of them, and I kind of underlined some things that you would want to emphasize, especially when you do your content tapes from me, your audio or videos, which is there are different types of weather and characteristics of each type. In particular, we're really looking at those that are characterized by water. So we're looking at water, we're looking at snow, rain, sleet, hail, and then the different, even droughts, lack of water, and we're looking at where those temperatures are, what temperatures are associated with what types of weather. And then we're also looking at C. You want some students, I think some pictures coming up. As you're going to learn about weather in fourth grade, but in first grade we start with some simple weather instruments, thermometers which measure temperature, and you should have access to those. A wind vane or a weather vane which shows you the wind direction. It doesn't show you wind speed. It's not showing you how many miles per hour the wind is. That's a different instrument, but wind vanes or weather vanes are those ones that spin around and tell you north, south, west, and east. And then a rain gauge is how much rain has fallen. And so when you look at these things like temperature, which is thermometer, and rain gauge, which is precipitation, and then your sky conditions a little bit could be your wind, you want to look at taking measurements. And one of the key things is to look at this over time so that the temperatures that you find in the fall are different than the winter and then in the spring. So just an idea of phenomena, these are some examples. So when we look at, there's one thing that's a phenomenon itself is that we have different weather events associated with different seasons. So for example, in fall we get hurricanes, and then there's a question of like, I mean, these are just like ideas, why do hurricanes occur on the East Coast? And winter we have snowstorms. We don't have those in the summer. In spring we have tornadoes, not so much in Atlanta, but they can be after effects of other things. And then summer, I just brought this up because this is a phenomenon over the summer, which are the heat domes. Now these aren't necessarily things that you would explore with children, but they're exactly the kind of things that are a phenomenon. And you can go ahead and find those that speak to you and that you want to explore, or you may set aside time during your year where you're going to say, okay, well this week we're going to look at, and there's so many current events, like weather is a great way to bring in current events and the phenomenon that happen. We don't even know what they're going to be. I mean, you have this amazing snowstorms in New York last year. Those might happen again this year. So weather is like a great one for just watching and waiting and seeing what happens. So I just want to show you some pictures. That's the rain gauge, and this again is if you can make one of those with your students, and then follow over time, we might find that we have huge amounts of rain. We might find that we don't have very much rain at all, and that becomes very important as far as just understanding the rhythms of weather and what's expected and what happens when things aren't expected. And then this is a classic wind vane or weather vane. They're the same thing, and this little fish will turn around and it will point in the direction the wind is coming from. So the wind is coming from the west. We want to go here, and here are some big ideas about weather. It changes from day to day and season to season. So weather is different from climate. Climate they're going to get in fourth grade, but the idea that weather is different every day is very much a big idea, and that we can use science to measure the weather conditions. And number 3 are those instruments I talked about. We want students to understand that rain and snow come from clouds, and that wind is air that moves. And we tend to have a lot more wind in spring and fall than in the winter and the summer. Especially in Atlanta, we don't have very much wind in the summer. We want them to see that pattern that in the fall the days are getting cooler, and the spring the days are getting warmer. So in that regular repeat of time. And that daily weather isn't the same everywhere. So the weather that we have in Atlanta is not the weather they're having in Boston or Chicago or New Orleans. And then we just want to relate this idea of ice and water to temperature. and we can look at the temperature outside, and we can make predictions that if the if the rain is if the water is going to fall from the sky, if it's under 32 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to get snow. If it's above 32 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to get rain. If it's close to that temperature, we might get sleet or hail. So that's the idea of weather. And so when you think about your explaining of the weather, you want to look at these standards, and you can work from here. You can add to there, you can subtract to there, but you want to make sure that you're thinking in advance of what content you want students to learn, because that's how you're going to pick your storyline or your activities.